It's time for Talkward, Cringeworthy Tales. And now, your host, weekly humorist, editor-in-chief, Marty Dundix.
Hi, and welcome to Talkward. I'm Marty Dundix, editor-in-chief of Weekly Humorist Magazine, and this is Talkward, a fun little podcast where professionally funny people come to tell awkward and cringeworthy stories. And I'm so excited for today's guest. He is, I'm sure he's so chock full of awkward and cringeworthy stories because I've met him so many times, and I know that he's just bubbling with them by default. Also, incredibly prolific comedy writer, book author, all-around great guy, comedy expert. Please welcome Mike Sachs to the show. Hi, Mike Sachs.
Fellow Marylander. You're a fellow Marylander.
Fellow Marylander. Fellow Brooklyner.
That's right. That's why we do not live far from each other.
We do not. And we never see each other. And
I have to say, you say expert. I really am I have zero expertise on anything. I just like what I like, and what I like, I really like. But I am no expert on comedy.
I feel like you've become an expert sort of in the way that you've just been on a hunt and a search for the truth or for answers. And to get the expertness, you've just interviewed and spoken to people who you think are valuable resources of comedy knowledge. And you have been able to reach them, and they've spoken to you. And you've written so many books, poking a dead frog, and here's the kicker, right? So these are like incredibly big comedy interview books, talking to very famous comedians. And what have you learned from all of these incredibly comedy talented people in your pursuit of truth?
Well, I should say this. The pursuit was always a bit selfish because I only wanted to pick the brains of the best. I thought that if I were to go after the best of the best, I could ask the questions that I always wanted to know: what to do in this crazy world of comedy and what not to do. I should also say it wasn't comedians so much as comedy writers. The first book was for Writers Digest Press, so it was all geared towards writers. And when I started in 2007, 2008, not many people were doing this. So it wasn't to get a podcast. It wasn't to get my own website. It was just to put out a book of interviews with comedy writers that I would have wanted to read when I was a kid. I mean, my perfect audience for this book was a high schooler skipping math class and stumbling upon this book in the library and just being excited because someone else liked the same things he or she liked.
What gave you, I feel like a lot of the people in the comedy world, myself included, kind of got their taste in comedy, whether it was alt comedy or whatever, when we were in like middle school. I feel like middle school is a real kind of fertile ground for developing your personality, it's going to be like, that's going to be it. I feel like in a lot of ways I was kind of done. By 8th grade, I was kind of the me I was going to be until I've expired. And it was kind of like that was kind of when I found the things that I nerded out on and became into. What did you get into around that time that made you like the things that you like and kind of went in the direction that you were in?
Well, and that's an interesting point. Music is like that. Personality is like that. Sensibility, friendships. And I think, as you're maturing, as you become an adolescent, your humor IQ, your humor sensibility sort of becomes more cohesive. And I've noticed that with all people who are in comedy professionally, and even those who aren't. It was around middle school that their real loves for comedy started to coalesce and maybe differentiate a bit from their friends. I remember watching, to me, Late Night with David Letterman with Chris Elliott was it. That was the show for me. And I remember showing friends Chris Elliott bits on that show, and they were a bit perplexed. But to me, it was just heaven. And to this day,
he's such a genius. Chris Elliott, one of the most underrated voices in comedy. His David Letterman stuff, insanely funny. And then his, Get a Life, which if you look back on, like, talk about a chance Fox was taking on putting this on like primetime comedy. Get a Life is so ridiculous and so great and strange.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they would take chances like that
No.
today
Well,
at
first
all.
of all, no, they wouldn't. And they didn't know what they were getting and weren't happy when they got it. It was
And-
very strange. It was ahead of its time comedically. I mean, it really was the first 30-year-old refuses to show up and move out of his house years before Will Ferrell and Judd Apatow and all that. I mean, that was
Yeah.
really years ahead of his time. And if you watch that show now, it's still as bizarre as it was in the early 90s. But the
And
stuff that
Cabin Boy was a movie,
please.
like a real movie that came out.
I was
So
lucky
funny.
enough to be on the director's cut of that talk, interviewing Adam Resnick, who co-wrote and directed it, and
That's amazing.
Chris. You know, the funny thing about those two is they're very, very modest, and they're very hard on themselves. So they don't really see how they've been influential. But I would tell Chris whenever I saw him, and I tell Adam all the time, like, for me, the things that I do on the page now are basically everything is Chris Elliott coming out, pretending he's another person and fucking with Letterman. That to me, it was as good as it got. I mean, that was, I still have the VHS tapes that I would have and watch and rewatch in those years. So really it was, to me, Letterman. And then beyond that, Albert
Great old one.
Brooks.
Here's an old one here. This is a stupid Human Tricks videotape from late
Look
night,
at
which
that.
is a great one. I have
Is
a bunch
that
of these.
legal or is that a bootleg?
This is illegal. This was from NBC. This was from Good Times Home Video Platinum Series.
All right. Well,
This is a 1994 edition.
Let's talk
of,
about stupid pet tricks. That was created by Merrill Marco, who is another huge influence on me. Merrill co-created the show going back to the daytime show with David.
The David Letterman show.
That's right. And it was her sensibility that put that show together. And she was really the flame that sort of sparked the genius on that show. I think, and also she later became an amazing writer of books and articles. So influence-wise, it was Merrill Marco, David Letterman, and Chris Elliott.
He was really good at making the thing that I always watched late night, and I would watch it. I would stay up until after Carson. I'd watch it. I had this little black and white TV that I had in my room growing up, and it was like in very 90s. It was like this plastic see-through TV, so you could like see the components, and but it was like this big, and I would have it on, and I would turn it on after Carson, so it would be like way too late for me and I'd get up and I'd like put it on, and I would just watch it in black and white, and I would watch Dave like throwing shit out of the window and bothering his neighbors, and the thing that was so much fun about Dave's show is he made it into like he was sort of the sane-ish one who would be in this room of mental patients. You know, it was like this clubhouse of all these characters.
In the beginning of the show.
Yeah, because he didn't have anything. Yeah, he built the
Right.
show out of nothing. He had no money. He didn't have a budget, and he just kind of was this like jerky behavior. Was kind of like what they would do. They wouldn't be able to get big guests yet. And when you watch the old late night tapes, like the celebrities that they would have on really weren't celebrities, but it was like they needed someone to talk to, and they would have on just real unknown bands. It was such a fun show that they were let to percolate this show at 12:35 and kind of do whatever they wanted, which is fantastic.
Well,
in
imagine that.
Standards,
imagine that happening today. I mean, it was a very
totally different. Different.
I thought it was a very punk type of show. I mean, Merrill Marco has talked about that. They would beg guests to come on the show. I mean, can you imagine that happening now with a late night TV show?
Right.
And it was run by people who hated show business or traditional showbiz. So it was almost like looking into his basement, like a future Wayne's World.
Yeah.
You never knew who was going to come out. And even people who did come out, you didn't know if they were the show's writers or not, if they were real or not. I mean, that's one of the things I love about Chris Elliott. And actually, I was like you in the 90s. I had a little TV, a little black and white that I would tune into in my room. And the thing about Chris Elliott's characters were, especially the earlier characters, they were as frightening as they were funny. I mean, they scared the shit out of me watching it on my little black and white TV. Like he seemed capable of just madness, craziness, even more so I thought than Andy Kaufman when you see him on Fridays. To me, that just seems like fake, like a wrestling move. But with Chris Elliott, like there was like a look in his eyes that didn't quite jibe with what else was going on. Like the guy under the seats. Like here's the guy who lived under the seats. And to me, watching that at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, alone in my room on a black and white TV, it was like watching an old horror movie. It scared me. And I love that combination of scary and funny.
It was just such a fun. They were allowed to have this weirdness, this kind of anti-establishment that they got to kind of thrive in because they were it was so opposite of what the Tonight Show was doing. Like the Tonight Show at the time, Johnny Carson was like this institution, right? So it was like it was such a different thing from 11:30 to 12:30 on NBC, just insanely different. And Dave got to just do this entirely different thing, which, I mean, Conan kind of did too when Conan got to go in, just because Conan seemed so unprepared for, being a TV host. He was such a writer and he was kind of thrown in. Where it's gone with Seth Meyers, it's not at all the Late Night with David Letterman show that, we loved, or the weirdness even that Conan did. It's just almost more like closer looks or kind of Weekend Update-y. It's been morphed into more of a Weekend Update show. There's, it's not about the monologue. It's not about banter. It's just different. It's a different show. I think almost Jimmy Kimmel, who was obsessed with Dave, with Dave growing up.
Yeah.
Jimmy Kimmel Live has a lot of the old Letterman feel of just like ridiculousness.
It does, but it's a different time. I mean, if you look at the early Letterman, it's a lot slower. There's no fake applause sign. There's no applause sign. So there's, there was
hardly anybody there.
Well, there were some bits that I loved as a kid, and I went back and watched somewhat recently, Chris Elliott bits, and there is zero laughter from the audience, which you would never have today. Like, they're in shock. They don't know what they're watching, and you would never have that sense of mystery now. And, it seems that a lot of late night shows are now geared towards people who don't watch it live, who aren't watching it at the time, who watch it the next day in 3-minute bits during coffee break. It's just a different world. It's also sped up and louder. The shows are a lot louder now.
Yeah, and they're faster cuts. There's a lot more there's a lot more commercials. It's a lot more all kinds of stuff. I love Late Late Show with James Corden. I just think he's an interesting guy. I think he's so talented. I think he's doing kind of the counter to what late night was doing, and he's just kind of trying to have fun with it. And I like that he's so different than what we're used to. And I think his music stuff is really good. And I like that he's just kind of having a cocktail party. I like that aspect of having all the guests on one couch. That's fine.
Yeah, I think it's he's a fun guy and a seemingly likable guy, and he seems like he's truly enjoying it. He's also one of the hardest workers out there. I mean, the guy is all these people, they're just absolute lunatics. You can't be a late night host and be lazy. I mean, it's your life, and how these people do it day after day, especially during the Trump era, when all you do is have to think about this loathsome character and his cronies. I don't know how more hosts and comedy writers aren't driven mad by it.
I feel like the late night schedule, definitely a lot of people opted out, like Kilborn, Ferguson. I think they had enough. I think they were like, this is a lot. Like, this is a grind.
Oh yeah.
And people get burned out, and they're like, I could have a happier life not doing the show every day.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting too is that some of the best interviews I've seen are late night shows. I mean, Colbert, and in particular, Trevor Noah. I think Trevor is one of the sharpest minds and the best interviewers on television. I mean, he makes the morning show people look like clowns. He's incredibly sharp, doesn't let anything pass him by. And the questions he's asking is really the type of questions you should be seeing on news programs. I mean, really, really sharp stuff.
Yeah, no softballs. Like, no, just like jokey. No, it's not overly jokey. The morning shows are overly jokey.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's just a waste. And all those guys. I mean, Jimmy, all of the late night guys are exceptional interviewers. It may be, Bill Maher is questionable, but a lot of those guys are just really, they need to know what they need to know, and there's no BS.
Yeah. Now, speaking of talk show hosts, let's talk about a fictitious talk show host. Your new book, Passing on the Right, My Ups, My Downs, My Lefts, My Rights, My Wrongs, and my career so far in this bizarre world of comedy.
There it is. Look at this.
By Skippy Batty Baddinson.
Battison, yeah, baby. He's from Maryland, like us.
He's from Maryland, and so this is the unofficial or the official but unauthorized, because he got dumped from his publisher, so he has decided to self-publish this memoir of his life, and he is a horrible comedian who has found a niche as being a right-leaning pundit, which is incredibly true. Like,
yeah.
The amount of people that I have seen. Hold on, I have your book here to show, so people can get this now. This is on Amazon. This is on Bookshop. You can get it on for ebook or for hard copy. So get it today. Pick up Mike Sachs's new book, Passing on the Right, with this wonderful character, Skippy. Oh, Skippy. So Skippy, who's from Maryland, like you and I.
Yeah.
You're great at writing Maryland characters, because
I
believe Randy was also a Marylander.
Everyone I've ever written is from Maryland. I've lived in New York now for over 20 years, and I know nothing about New York. To me, my heart is back in Montgomery County. Actually, from D.C., Northwest D.C., going east into Frederick County, all of that area, all those miles and neighborhoods I know really, really well. And I know this type of character. I worked for retail in 10 years in Maryland, and I grew up around people like this. But this character actually is a little different from Randy and from other characters. This is sort of a rich guy. He's sort of Brett Kavanaugh-like. In fact, he knows Brett Kavanaugh. He grew up with Brett Kavanaugh. He went to Georgetown Prep like 10 years after Brett Kavanaugh. So he's a very entitled guy. One of the Fast Company wrote about the book, and the journalist, I thought, nailed it. He said, Skippy is a meteor of mediocrity. And I think that's just perfect, that he's a total fucking mediocrity. He's failed at everything he's done, and he's done everything or tried to do everything. And he's sort of mediocred his way right into the right-wing conservative movement and found success as a podcaster and as a satellite radio star, and then as the leader of the so-called January 6th insurrection.
Now, this is reminding me of a lot of things that have happened during the pandemic, and maybe you noticed this. There's been a bunch of, not hitting at comics, not being successful comics, who have turned right and gotten attention, and that now getting much more famous for being very right, much more famous than they ever were for doing regular jokes. And now it's like, and I look at it and I think this is like the dark side. Like, you get a little bit of attention by saying this crazy thing over and over again. And then all these people are like, yeah, this guy. And then they're like, wow, I'm finally making it. So I'm just going to turn harder right, and then I'll get more famous. And it's only been, 2 years of this. And I have people that are like super anti-vax now. And it's not something that they ever were before. Right. Yep. And but now it's like all they talk about, and they're getting crazy views. They're getting crazy TikTok views. They're becoming internet famous for being, very right. And it's just like, it's like they're taking the blue pill or the red pill, and they're saying, I'm going to go down this road now because I think I can be famous if I say it like this. And that's kind of how I'm seeing. Yeah. I'm seeing Batty doing this kind of, he seems like he's always been kind of a douche.
Yeah, he's total douche, knows nothing about politics, stumbles on Ayn Rand, and hasn't even read the books. He just likes her anti-tax, anti-government philosophy. He's an idiot. And he is an example of a comedian or comedy personality who, you're right, falls into this world that until then they were not successful. And once they do so, once they start saying things that people of like-minded philosophy start agreeing with, it builds up his brand, and he just keeps going forward. Now, the interesting thing is someone like Dennis Miller, I think is a truly conservative. I don't think he's faking it. Someone like Jim Brewer, who knows? He wasn't exactly on the fast track to success recently, and now he has an audience that's triple what it was before.
Right.
My feeling is he was always a dickhead and always had these crazy feelings and thoughts and conspiracy theories, and is now just enjoying in heaven that he sees that other people agree with him. It doesn't make him any funnier though, or any more clever.
But he's finding his little niche, and he's able to
Totally.
monetize that niche.
It's just incredible that there is this niche for comedy that goes after the little people, goes after science, goes after truth. I have never witnessed it before. It is brand new, and I find it disgusting and very telling of this moment in time where anyone could find any of this stuff funny or amusing to go after Fauci or to go after Biden or to go after pro-choice. It's not funny, and it goes
Right.
against everything that comedy should be.
Exactly. Like by default, comedy is sort of this, this like, punching up and, anti-authority.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of a thing where you're fighting for the little guy, and these very right-leaning people are very much punching down on people who are like dying and having their rights taken away. And you're kind of like, how is this an angle? Like, I don't really understand.
It's so true.
I don't really,
I
don't really get it.
I'm friends with Paul Feig a little bit, and he's on Instagram, and we were emailing back and forth. And I was saying to him, every fuckhead, every douchebag that I got into comedy to get away from in high school, everyone who was mocking me and throwing food at me or mocking my gay friends or mocking my nerdy friends, these are all the fucking douchebags in comedy now. Like, I got into comedy to get away from these assholes, not to still be with them. A Jim Brewer, a Bill Maher, a Dennis Miller. These aren't the type of people I want to be around. These aren't people whose comedic lodestar seems to be in the right direction. It seems to be totally skewered.
So this character, I'm getting a lot of kind of Gutfeld from him, who just
that's
seems
a perfect example. Perfect example.
This guy is like, I'm the crazy comedy guy of Fox News, and a little bit. I think I remember Tom Shalhoub was on Red Eye as a host for a little bit, but I never really got the hard right feel from Tom Shalhoub as much as a Gutfeld, who just like really kind of turned it to be like, I want to be as right as possible. I want to be super pro Trump, and I'm a comedian. And it just seemed so interesting that they were having like a comedy show on a news channel, just because they couldn't have a comedy show on a regular network that at all was like this, because it just would get thrown out in 2 seconds and nobody would watch, and there'd be protests and no sponsors. But they had to like shoehorn a comedy show onto a very conservative opinion right-wing news site. It just seems like a very interesting, odd thing. And then it says when you see a show, I don't know, like this, it seems like a fake TV show.
Yeah,
it just doesn't seem real.
It seems like a horror show. I mean, for many years, they being conservatives wanted to have a conservative daily show.
Right.
Never worked out because you can't pull it off. You're not going to pull that off. What they did figure out, which is just horrific, is that you don't need to come up with funny writers. You don't need to do much. All you need to do is send this asshole down to Chinatown to make fun of the locals, or send him into a bus depot and mock homeless people. That's all you need to do. You don't need jokes. You don't need a big staff. And to me, I just find that lazy comedy for one, and sad and terrifying that anyone would find it funny that he's talking down to homeless people, telling them to get a job, or making cliched Asian jokes. Who would find that funny? Obviously, a lot of people do. But to me, that was a turning point. I mean, when he started going after, people who in no way deserve mocking, I just thought this is a whole new thing.
It's a whole new low, and it lets people who are horrible laugh with their other horrible friends, with someone making jokes that are as horrible as them. I don't know. It's like they're trying to find their niche, and their niche is just like being terrible, and they all just like thrive in this little world of being a deplorable, which I think has become to be true. Like, it's something that, Hillary Clinton got, destroyed for saying, but like, it's so true that it's like they found themselves to be like this basket of deplorables now.
Well, I mean, listen, that is the difference. I mean, in the past, you would have comedians doing a wonderful thing, and they would put together these shows that would collect money for those who are homeless. A great thing. Now you have a fucking comedian going to where homeless unfortunately live, and there's more now because the economy is crazy and all that. And his point is just to mock them.
Yeah, there used to, I mean, like Comic Relief Live has been, or like Comics Give Back, or like there's all of these great comedy focused Stand Up to Cancer. Like there's all these great comedy charities.
Yeah.
And then in the same breath, there's like mean anti, humanity comedy.
I mean, to me, it's just very low humor IQ. And if someone doesn't get my sense of humor, that's fine. But for someone to laugh at something like that, I just find it very, very sad, a very sad state of things. So Skippy in the book actually, shows all of these personality types. And he is actually at one point puts together a comedy improv troupe consisting of homeless people, and he enjoys rating homeless people he sees on the streets of New York City from 1 to 5 cardboard boxes. This is his way of making fun of these people. I mean, I really hope that people see that this character I'm creating, I despise. It's the angriest book I've ever written. I hope people don't conflate this character with anything that I believe in. It's basically an X-ray version. Everything I believe that I like, he hates. Everything that he hates, I like.
I love his the beginning of him starting stand-up comedy. And I mean, we're both from Maryland, so I know Beach Week well. And I spent my if you're listening in and you live in the Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, the Delmarva Peninsula, you know that after you graduate high school, you go to Ocean City, Maryland for a week, and someone gets their parents to rent a place because it'd be horrible. You wouldn't be allowed to rent as a 17-year-old or whatever, and spend a whole week with a bunch of underage people making a mess and I remember I did that. It ran the entire week. We stayed at like a terrible hole of a place, like 8 guys in this like real shithole dump on like 123rd Street or something.
I was on 110.
And we couldn't go to the beach. There was no nice weather. It was pouring. It was cold. We went to a place called Tubby's every day to get like these like cheeseburger subs. They were so bad for you, but we would just eat them all day because that's what we had to do. So Skippy goes to Beach Week, and then he graduates and he stays at Beach Week, and he doesn't really know what to do with himself. So he wants to be a stand-up comedian in Ocean City, Maryland, and he has a friend who's an opener. What's the friend's name?
The Flammer.
Flammer, and he paints houses. And then Skippy wants to be a headliner. So what does he do to get in?
All right, so Skippy, what he does is this. He figures he wants to write. He doesn't know what to do. Beach Week turns into Beach Month, which turns into Beach Months. And he meets this guy on the boardwalk. He's named the Flammer. He's reading Needful Things by Stephen King, which is Skippy's favorite book, and learns that the Flammer is a local comedian. So Skippy wants to now get into stand-up comedy because he thinks it'll lead to a writing career for movies or TV out in Hollywood, and he's going to make a ton of money. So he goes to the Sandbar and Grill in Ocean City, which actually existed. I'm not sure if it's still there. And sees
with
that
DJ Batman.
Yes. Do you ever go to Big Pecker's Bar and Grill in Ocean City, Maryland?
Of course. I think I have a t-shirt. I have all the I have the green turtle t-shirt where the turtle's fucking the other turtle.
The bearded clam.
Bearded clam. Like all of the naughty places to buy t-shirts. Ridiculous. You always buy the t-shirts. Yeah. And you're like, I got the t-shirt. It's so fucking cool. And then you never wear it again.
Exactly. I bought the Big Pecker's t-shirt, wore it once, I think, without leaving the house. So Skippy sees that it's a lot harder to get up on stage than he figured. So what he does is he pays the owner of this club, or he has his father pay $75,000 for Skippy to perform 5 headlining sets. The first one being Thanksgiving afternoon. And Skippy looks at it as being, hey, all my friends went to Ivy League schools or started businesses or went to work for their parents. Why shouldn't my father pay the $75,000? This is my schooling. This is how I'm going to get ahead. And he pays that $75,000 and things don't go as he plans.
I love, and I haven't heard it, and I don't know, in the audiobook, do you get to hear the audio of the first stand-up?
I am actually working on the audio right now. I play Skippy, and I very much want to do that.
I
It would,
love because I get to
yeah.
read the stand-up transcript according to Skippy, and I love that Skippy's like, now if you listen to Mark Maron or Joe Rogan, they'll go on and on about how there's no reaction from the audience, but if everyone knows that if you're getting the tape from the soundboard, from the microphone, it wouldn't have any of the audience reaction.
Right,
It only has the microphone. Duh. So
right.
you can't hear how hard I'm killing, but I am. And
Throughout
it's
the
so
book, there's
funny.
always him explaining to the reader, listen, I know that John Hamm has made fun of this movie script. I know that so and so has talked about this and there's always an explanation for why they're wrong. In reality, he's a fucking delusional asshole. And when he gets up on that stage the first time, no one likes him. He doesn't hear that. He hears what he wants to hear. He doesn't know that they kick him off early because he sucks. Not that
He's
they want
so
to
bad.
sell,
His jokes are so bad.
and
It's
very
so
mean
bad.
too. Very
It's
mean
all about
spirited.
whores. It's all about, and then the only jokes that are actual jokes are the ones he steals from his
Yes.
friend because he
Yes.
bought
Yes.
the jokes from him.
The only good jokes in the books are those he steals from others, including some Onion headlines, which he stole from a guy. But it was really funny and fun to write this character because the margin of error is built in. I didn't really have to be funny. I could be as unfunny as I could be, and I typically am. And it just made the character that much stronger. So
Yeah.
he is just the worst writer, the worst stand-up, the worst podcaster, but he has just made him a name for himself, piggybacking off of these philosophies that he knows very, very little about.
So what happens with Skippy and January 6th, the insurrection? Like how did he get himself wrapped up into it?
Well, what happened was he was there to perform for his podcast. He had worked with Giuliani and a lot of other Brett Kavanaugh to punch up their speeches and to give them jokes when they needed it. And he was there that day to interview a lot of his fans who were in the crowd. So he's there watching Trump, and he is the first person to make a run for the Capitol, not to attack the Capitol, but to make a more fun podcast, make a more fun show for himself. So he leads the charge with a passing on the right flag. Now, what ultimately happens is, and he points this out in the book, he did not try to go into the Capitol. He was pushed into the Capitol, and then military and guards prevented him from leaving. So he ended up in Nancy Pelosi's office, jerking off on the floor, using one of her panties over his face. Now, in his eyes, this was a comedic act. This is what he did to entertain his listeners. He also happens to have some sexual kinks that he doesn't view as being a bad thing. He is actually imprisoned at one point for sleeping with a mentally challenged underage girl who is with a charity that he does some work for. So he's in prison. He has some sexual kinks and does end up being arrested for masturbating in Nancy Pelosi's office.
Kind of Gatesy. You've really woven some reality into a lot of these stories, which is an odd thing to say, that the most terrible things that you've woven in are things that are actually happening now.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives it some of that feel of authenticity. Like the most crazy, disgusting things are the things you're just like kind of plucking from the news.
Oh, it's so easy. I mean, I didn't know how the book was going to end when I started. Then January 6th happened. I thought, okay, well, that's it. He has to be caught in the Capitol doing something that he thinks of as being comedically hilarious, but the rest of the world looks at as being just horrific. And that would be what he is caught doing in Nancy Pelosi's office.
And where do you see this going project-wise? Because obviously, I want to hear all this. I want to see him as a character doing all these horrible things. And you have had a great track record for creating projects on your own, getting them out there, and then making something cool with them. Stinker Lets Loose, huge, Audible audio, huge names, live shows, Passable in Pink, a really funny, 80s teen comedy novelization. That became an audio show with Jillian Jacobs, Adam Scott, Bobby Moynihan, Bob Odenkirk, Lorraine Newman.
Ray Seahorn.
Everybody was in this.
Yeah,
Judd
yeah.
Nelson. Judd
Judd
Nelson was
Nelson.
in that. That's hilarious. He's great.
I love Judd Nelson.
Justin Bateman. Justin Bateman is so good in so many ways. Like talented actress, but then also she's like a producer. She's just
director
on it, like on so many things.
She is the coolest person. Yeah, I love her, and she's great in this. There's a whole world here where Skippy talks quickly about a ton of projects that he wants to get off the ground, just the worst shit imaginable. I would love to hold celebrity readings for these scripts, write the script and then have celebrities read it. I mean, there's a whole backstory to this guy. Beyond that, I would love to release some of his more infamous concerts, stand-up routines, television jokes, things that he has talked about in the book, but was never released because it was just too awful. I think it would be fun to play with that. I mean, if I really wanted to take it far, I would create a fake podcast called Passing on the Right, and each week interview, say, an idiot actor about NATO or something, and both of us have no idea what we're talking about.
That would be great.
I think there's a lot that can be done with it.
Skippy is very different than like a Colbert Report, because Colbert was like very intelligent and very very right wing, but like in a but like a smarty pants kind of character. And Skippy just isn't. Skippy's just like a dumbass, inflammatory. I'll just say I'm just gonna shoot it straight, and I'm gonna say whatever I want, and everything he says is terrible, just like garbage.
Absolute fucking garbage. I mean, his jokes suck. His screenplays ideas are awful. One of the ideas is that it's a comedy that takes place during the Holocaust. He feels he was ahead of the time for this one before Life is Beautiful and all those other ones. This one is about an animated mouse who lives in beneath a Jewish person's yarmulke. And this is one of his script ideas. This is also a script that's ironically read by comedians he mentions and actors once a year to great laughs. But he also implies that he wrote it to get laughs, that he didn't write it to try to be serious. So there's just a ton of shit ideas. I just try to think of the worst possible ideas for scripts and jokes and books and everything else. Yeah, there's not a scintilla of intelligence. I mean, the Colbert character was very complicated. I don't know how they wrote for that, because he was, in the end, he was for not conservative things, but the character had to show, or at least pretend, that he was for that character. Very complicated. But this guy is a bit of a simpleton. There's no underlying reason for his what he does. There's also no underlying reason for his great success. He's a fucking moron, and he achieves great success. And that's what I've been seeing out there recently. There's just no nuance anymore with these far right people.
He's a little bit Gatesy in that, this new GOP of like the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Matt Gaetz, like they're just like very one note terrible people, and they just like kind of keep beating that same terrible drum. And then like the older Republicans who are like, they're conservative, but like for all of these reasons that are like, rational and normal to them, that's not like this new GOP. This new GOP is just like, it's almost like we just want followers, and we want people to watch our podcasts, and we just want to be firebrands, and it's just kind of like a very different take on politics. It's
totally
almost like
different take.
They don't want to be politicians. They just want to be famous for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see this. I saw it recently during the Dr. Fauci hearings, where you have these people attacking him, and that they don't believe this shit. But you also know that they are going to use it to their advantage to get more money for themselves. They sell swag, anti-Fauci swag. To me, it's even more frightening because they don't believe it. But the problem is their believers believe it. So when they go after Fauci to get attention, the people who are at home don't know that for some reason. They think that they genuinely don't like and trust him. In reality, it's just all a fucking show. And
they want to be like, if I say something shitty right now, everyone's gonna be like, yeah, you dunked on him.
Well, exactly.
That's gonna get him points or something.
You put Mr. Scientist in his place, and that philosophy is just sickening. I just can't believe everything I see now in the news is just. And I grew up, as you did, around DC. Politics was the company business.
Yeah.
I knew friends who had parents who were lobbyists and lawyers and politicians. Like, I'm used to this stuff, and this is something I've never. And it's just gone berserker. People have gone berserk.
It's interesting when you see anybody who is on like one of these political talk shows or being like a mouthpiece for, these lobbyists who are being a mouthpiece for, guns or big tobacco or any of these like horrible things. And they were like up there talking, and you're just like, but you're getting paid a shit ton of money to say this stuff. Would you be saying any of this stuff for free? No, you wouldn't be. Like, none of these people that you're watching on TV in their suits on saying all these great facts, like, if everyone was getting paid nothing, none of these people would be up here saying any of this stuff. And
Well, they wouldn't be up there saying it, but I do believe a lot of these politicians are saying in public what they've been saying in private all of these years, whether it's anti-Semitic, whether it's racist, whether it's misogynistic, anti-Muslim. There's just a freedom now to be that asshole at the party that everyone hated and to get money and attention and fame from it.
yeah, people aren't, they're not as like closeted with their evil views as they used to be.
No, they're quite proud actually to be out there saying Mexicans are this and Mexicans are that. And it's just, there's no pushback anymore. Nothing. I mean, for an insurrection to take place against the Capitol and then no pushback from the Republicans. And then he's now the leader, the front runner for the next presidential election. What fucking world are we living in? I mean, it's madness.
It is madness. It's completely crazy. It doesn't make any sense. And
It doesn't.
and like they're waiting. You keep hoping that something's going to come out. Like they're like plotting some kind of a smart federal investigation, and they're going to be like, oh yeah, we have all this evidence, and then it kind of nothing happens. You're kind of like, nothing. Come on, nothing's happening. What are you guys doing?
It's frustrating too, because you see these late night hosts and comedians and writers put their best into it over the last 5-6 years, and it really pushes the needle nowhere.
Yeah,
for all the millions of jokes about Trump and the GOP and the racism and this, it affects nobody. I don't think it changed one person's mind. So the role of comedy, the role of satire, I think has changed. And I think it's to the point where no one knows what is effective anymore.
Because people aren't, it's like they've almost become immune to shame.
Yeah.
It's like we've become a shameless society where people can do and be exposed for hypocrisy or whatever, and it doesn't seem to matter. Like it's like it just rolls off, and you're like, don't you feel bad about all of this shit you just said or did? And they're like, nah.
That's the thing. I mean,
next news cycle, everyone's forgotten already.
You have these scumbags that literally have been scumbags for 3 decades, 4 decades, that they just don't stop, and they're not being told to stop. They're being encouraged to keep going on. I mean, the fact that Giuliani was just revealed to be the hidden singer, whatever reality show that is,
the Masked Singer.
Who the fuck wants Giuliani on that show? He's a fucking almost. Know. I mean, he should be in prison for sedition, and he's out there dancing around in a a funny costume singing. Like,
very true.
We don't need him doing that. We don't want him doing that. Half of the country wants him to do that. The other half is repulsed by it. The problem is the other half that isn't repulsed by it. Why you would want that guy anywhere?
We need a game show. If Giuliani wants to be on a game show so bad, we need a game show where we have horribly shamed individuals, and then they get like double dared, where they're just getting like shot with pies, or they're getting humiliated. Like very like, I don't know, like Japanese game show where they're all getting destroyed, like Wipeout. Like, we could put a Giuliani or a Sean Spicer on like a Wipeout, and they're just getting like bashed around for a half an hour, and people could cheer for that. Like, maybe put them in a dunk tank, like a public shaming. Like, that would be a game show I would totally watch. Like,
yeah, you would, but half the country wouldn't.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, you would, but I mean, half the country likes these assholes.
Yeah.
So in no way would they put that. I mean, they in their own minds are heroes. And delightful. And I'm sure Giuliani thought, why shouldn't I be up on stage singing? I'm a delightful American, and I deserve.
We have a comment. We have a comment from the internet. Bob Eckstein writes, the show would be called "What's My Crime?"
I love Bob. Yeah, that's good.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, what's my crime? I like that.
There has to be some stakes, and like, maybe they have to go to jail. Like there could be something where it's almost like what was it? Not Blade Runner. What's the one where
Oh,
there's a game show and
yeah,
they're running?
yeah. The running, no, not the
Running Man.
Yeah.
Yes, Running
Yeah, but
Man.
that was written by Stephen King about these assholes. And no way. Yeah, these shows need to exist. They never would, because the country has lost its satirical bearings. They don't know which way is up anymore. In no way would they condone going after throwing a pie at Rudy Giuliani.
We have to put a Running Man situation together, and you're going to put Rudy Giuliani and Sean Spicer in some kind of crazy maze. They are fighting it out. They're getting hit by pies, Double Dare style. People would love that. And then in the end, one of them has to go to jail.
I mean,
like if they want to be on reality shows, that's a reality show I will watch.
Right. And that's a show no one else will watch because they love these people. I mean, it just goes on and on. Yeah, they do. They love these people. They tell it like it is. You know, Giuliani tells it like it is. Giuliani doesn't like Muslims. They don't like Muslims. He's great. He's a hero. He's America's mayor.
He's going to go. I mean, he's getting sued for like $1 billion. I mean,
all these people are being sued and never fucking mad. I mean, I have to show up to court for a traffic violation. These guys have started an insurrection coup against the United States and they don't show up.
Yeah.
So what the fuck is happening? Like, the Democrats really have to fucking get their act together because time is running out. And if these fuckers get into office and control the Congress and the Senate and eventually the presidency, we are doomed.
We are doomed. On that happy note, make sure you pick up Mike Sachs' book, Passing on the Right, My Ups, My Downs, My Lefts, My Rights, My Wrongs, and My Career So Far in This Bizarre World of Comedy. Other books that Mike has out, Slouchers, which is a great like grunge 90s.
Yes, that is being turned into an audiobook as we speak.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a very like Reality Bites-esque.
That was my generation. That book to me was the most personal book I've ever written, Slouchers, because that was the time that I came up, and
definitely Gen X, very grunge. You know, that whole Winona Ryder, Ben Stiller time for movies, which was definitely. I mean, I graduated high school in '97, so that's about me. Like my area was kind of like that lost generation of just like not doing stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a very thin period of time that felt like forever at the time. But if you go back and watch those movies now, I can tell you it's like looking at something from the 1930s. I mean, it is freaky.
And it's only like 4 years or less.
That's it. I mean, there were very few movies made from it. It was just such an explosion at the time.
I mean, Nirvana, like there was such a grunge movement that happened so quickly and then disappeared so quickly.
So quickly. Pump Up the Volume. Remember that movie?
I mean, like all of is Empire Records in that world?
Yeah, horrible.
You know,
horrible.
And what? Anyway, Airheads.
That's pretty good. I like Airheads.
Airheads is a great movie.
Yeah, people I can do
who are listening, if you could watch Airheads, watch Airheads. It's about the Lone Rangers, which is a 3-person group, and young Adam Sandler, young Brendan Fraser, middle-aged Joe Mantegna playing an old school DJ, Michael McKean, Michael Richards. And they take over this radio station that's going to change over to easy listening format. And they take over. They hold the radio station hostage, and I don't know to what end. Like they wanted to play their single or some shit like that. But it's a really funny, dumb movie, and you should watch it because it's great. It's a time capsule for sure.
Yeah, it's very much a time capsule, and I would even recommend more than that. Pump Up the Volume, which is just before the internet came in. And it's about this shortwave radio DJ, a teenager who disguises his voice and becomes a hero for his classmates who don't know him in real life, but just love this character and this persona that he's created. Christian Slater plays the DJ.
Christian Slater. He was in a bunch of those 90s movies. Remember Heathers? Remember how fucked up Heathers was?
Oh, God. I love it's one of my favorites. Love that movie.
Good movie. It's a good movie. There's some really good movies around that time. I feel like and maybe this is just the old man in me talking. There was a lot of stuff that happened, like really short bits. Like the 80s, there was a lot of great stuff in the 80s. It was a definite generation. 90s was a definite, like there was a definite 90s look and feel, the clothing, the music, the movies. And then we went like 2000 to now has kind of just been like, meh.
Yeah. I mean,
It's
there
a bit
was
of a wash.
there was
been kind of an up and down.
Oh, totally. I think there was a genius to John Hughes and what he produced in the 80s. You know, those movies in a lot of ways aren't acceptable. You know, a lot of things about them people find offensive, but there was a brilliance to John Hughes. He came originally from National Lampoon. You can kind of see that sensibility,
Definitely.
the 70s leaking into the 80s. But I think you're right. I mean, there's really nothing I can show my daughter that's contemporary. She's almost 13. That's contemporary. That would be the equivalent of the stuff that I used to grow up with.
Like a real nice coming of age. Like it's the people that are doing good stuff that are like the coming of age of the 80s are doing 80s reboots, so it's like they're trying real hard. Like, Stranger Things is trying to be like that, and they achieve it by being more like that time period. You're kind of like, they get that feeling of like the riding the bikes and what we used to do as kids. And now it's like the kids don't get to do any of that stuff today. Like,
I know,
there isn't that pretend independence that we had when we were growing up. Now it's like kids don't go anywhere. Kids just play on their phone all day and they get bullied online nonstop. We didn't have any of that. Like, wasn't even.
I mean, I was feral. I was out of the house all day. But what are you going to do about today's middle school age grade, to make a movie? I mean, everyone's masked or at home or independent and doing their own thing on their own phones. The sense of community is not out there. And you're right. Everything seems to look back in comedy. I haven't really seen anything that sort of captured this generation's zeitgeist or sensibility, meaning my daughter's generation, movie-wise. I just haven't seen anything that sort of speaks to everyone like a John Hughes movie did for us.
Yeah. What are you watching now? I feel like the pandemic's actually given us a ton of great new shows to stream, because all of these streaming places are competing with each other. So they all have to kind of bring it more than they had been before. Like Peacock or Apple TV, like they're all competing. So they're all trying to get more projects going. It's
incredible. I mean, I really do try to limit television because I like to write and read at night, but I've watched a few things that are amazing. On Hulu, Pen 15, I thought was like spooky good. I thought the two women who played the 7th and 8th graders were astonishing. I thought that was amazing. I'm watching Narcos Mexico, which is incredible acting, outrageously good. That's on Netflix. And mostly what I'm watching until the Orioles come back on the air when spring training begins.
How about them O's, hon?
Oh, O's! I'm actually headed down to Baltimore soon. I'm going to interview John Waters for New Yorker, and I'm excited.
Oh, that's great. He's a great Baltimorean.
Oh, I love
John Waters.
I opened, David Sedaris was nice enough to allow me to open for a few shows, and one of the shows was in Baltimore. And I knew John Waters a little bit, and I just hesitantly asked if he'd like to come, and he said yes, he did. He came with his entire office. So that was a total thrill to see him in the audience. And I said after I did my bit, which is true, my father used to drive me around Fells Point in Baltimore because I insisted that I see where John Waters' movies was shot. Now, my father had no idea where John Waters' movies was shot, but he just drove me through these areas in Baltimore thinking that it would quench my thirst. And it did. But anyway, Baltimore. So what I was saying was, I don't really watch much, but what I do watch most of all is the Criterion Channel, which is incredible. I mean, there are so many movies, so many decades of movies that I have never seen. And I'm fascinated by it. I'll just stumble upon them. Like this morning, I was watching the movie that the director of The Harder They Come made after he made that movie, and it's been lost for like 40 years, just recently found, and they put it back together and they fixed it up, and it looks incredible. So it was just like a magical time machine to watch this movie that has not been seen since the mid-70s.
I need to check out that Criterion Channel. I have not been. And I also want to check out, did you see that Being the Ricardos? Because I'm a big I Love Lucy fan, but I have not seen the Aaron Sorkin version of that.
I have no interest. What I do want to see is the new Pam and Tommy sex tape.
That does look
set
interesting.
with
I
the
mean,
talking
Nick
penis.
Offerman, like that looks
Yeah.
great.
It looks great. I mean, and the fact that they had the fact that the penis talks, I think, is brilliant.
That's not true. Is that true?
I think so.
Well, I'll watch it anyway.
Does
But
your
that guy that
penis?
looks like Tommy Lee does look just like Tommy Lee.
Yeah, he does. I mean, they tatted him up, and he's good to go. Put a dig all schlong on him, and there he goes.
I remember that. I remember that tape coming out. That was a very big deal at the time.
Yeah,
that was a huge deal.
Before people or celebs leaked them themselves.
Yeah, they did not
No.
pivot that tape the way that the Kardashian empire began from that tape.
No.
They did not use the same roadmap. Like
Or
nothing
Paris
good
Hilton.
came nothing good came from their VHS at all.
You ever see One Night in Paris?
No.
That's the Paris Hilton sex tape. It's online.
Is that good?
It's awful. She could not look more bored. I mean, it looks like she's in math class.
Well, hopefully they've developed better. Now, now with the special effects, they could fix that in post.
Right, like a Star Wars type character.
Oh, I just watched the new episode of Boba Fett, and they had more of the Luke Skywalker.
Oh, nice.
Being
I
young
like
Luke.
that show.
And the way that they're able to make Luke Skywalker look like young Luke right now is absolute magic.
It's incredible.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
That's my favorite I have two favorite Star Wars characters. One is a waitress you'll see in the cantina in the original movie. She's just there for a second, but I always think about, like, what is her life about? The other favorite character is the one Amy Sedaris plays. She is fantastic.
She's great. She was in the episode I watched last night.
I love
she is so funny in that. She's the best. Great actress, such a funny character, brings so much to that show.
She's a genius. And that is the only Star Wars character that I sort of can emphasize with. I mean, she looks like someone I would have grown up with in Maryland. The rest of them, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, you know where she's coming from. Yeah.
Oh, I know where she's coming from.
Maybe she's in Harvard to Grace. I don't know. She's building some cars.
She's not too far down. She grew up in North Carolina. Used to go to the Atlantic Beach, Morehead City down there, where I used to go too. So she's not too far from Delmarva.
Delmarva got some car. She's got some cars in the yard, up on block. She's working on them.
Oh yeah,
exactly the same as on Tatooine.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Similar.
She is everyone I work with as a teenager. I love that character.
A very relatable character.
Yeah.
This was wonderful, Mike Sachs. I'm so happy that you
Marty,
decided to chat with me about your wonderful new book. Everyone needs to get it. Passing on the Right, My Ups, My Downs, My Lefts, My Rights, My Wrongs, quote, and my career so far in this bizarre world of comedy.
Yeah, I wanted even the subtitle to be horribly written, and he achieved it.
People should pick it up now. You can get it on Bookshop. You can get it on Amazon. I'm sure you can get more information at MikeSachs.com.
Yeah, you can get it anywhere, and I am recording the audiobook as we speak. The digital book is available right now, and the print officially comes out 2/22, February 22nd. But hey, wink, wink, you can actually receive it tomorrow if you order it right now. How you like that? That's the great thing about putting out your own books. No one's telling you what to do. You can do whatever you want.
It's true. You can just go for it.
Yep.
It's like a power that I think people realize. Like I publish books through humorous books, through Weekly Humorist, and you can cut out the middleman. Like you can in this world of online book selling. Like you can get people to read your book. You can get people to buy your book, and if you just make it available to them, they will read it. Everyone reads things on Kindle anyway. I like to get a hard copy book, and you can get a hard copy book from Amazon or Bookshop within days of the way that things are with publishing now. So you've done a great job of taking that opportunity and making amazing content on your own terms.
Well, that's a whole other episode. I mean, I could talk about that forever. There's a lot of pluses for a comedy writer to do that. I mean, first of all, you talk about the middleman. The middleman in publishing usually doesn't have a sense of humor. So if you get rid of that middleman, you can achieve a lot, and you can do it a lot more quickly than you would if you were to wait for it to get accepted by a publisher, then by an agent and then a publisher, and then wait the 2 years before it comes out officially. It's just too long a period of time when it comes to comedy. No one can predict that far down the road what will be funny or what won't be funny, what will be in the air at that point.
And the way that the world works now, people, it's like everything is so immediate that to be able to compete, you have to have a book that can come out in a timetable that is much shorter. Like the relevancy of some of this humor has to be faster.
Yes.
And that's just what people are used to now. Like people don't want to wait, a couple of years to get a book. It's like and in that couple of years, someone can scoop you. Someone can write something that's exactly the same and put it out in two weeks.
And I think really that's why book publishing has really lagged behind television and online and podcasts for comedy, because it's just too slow and it's too tethered to a 20th century schedule that doesn't follow what we're now living in. And I think that needs to change. And what you're doing with your publishing house and what I'm doing, hopefully will make others and want others to do the same, to put out books that are funny, like you would see in the heyday of National Lampoon or the black comedy of the 1960s.
Because the big places that put out books aren't doing little dumb comedy books, because it's like, why waste the time and money on it? No one's, I don't want to, this isn't going to sell enough to break even or to make the numbers, or it doesn't make logical sense.
Right.
But publishing doesn't make logical sense and never has, which is why smaller places like us need to exist.
Well, the thing is,
little books come out.
Little books. Now, the books that influenced me, whether they're National Lampoon's High School Yearbook or whether it was Don Novello's fake high school yearbook with lambs instead of students. I mean, these are really strange. Or the later Mark Lehner and David Sedaris. These are quote unquote little books that meant a lot to me. And I think there's a lot of books that young comedy fans are missing out on because it's just not done anymore. And it's not done because the talent doesn't exist. It's done because it's just an old system that needs to change.
Yeah.
And even if it doesn't sell 1 million books, and even if it doesn't, even if it isn't sold in an airport bookstore, to me, it's worthwhile because you will always find like-minded comedy geeks out there who will hopefully enjoy these type of things.
There was a book, it was a paperback book that I picked up somewhere when I was in middle school. And, I used to always go to garage sales or secondhand in thrift shops, and I was always into picking up stuff for nothing. And there was a paperback comedy book called Max Slade, Private Dick. And it was a comedy detective novel that was put out, and I still have it. And I remember looking at it and being like, who put this book out?
Yeah.
Because this book is so silly.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is humor that would be very much like Airplane or Naked Gun. It's real, just obvious, dumb joke after joke after joke. It's like written exactly like Leslie Nielsen was saying it.
Yeah.
And it was put out by like a Random House imprint.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no one is making this book today.
No one.
I
mean, you see John Swartzwelder, the Simpsons writer, who has to put out his own books because, well, he's also a very independent person, let's just say, but there's no way those books that he writes, and he's written like 22 of them so far, no publisher would ever touch those. It just wouldn't be worth it to them. But for me as a comedy fan and others out there, it's just gold. And the fact that they exist at all, I think is just a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, the whole system it's geared towards self-starters who really want to get their stuff out there. So, if you can get someone to design your book, if you have the content, if you know what you want to write, anyone can be an author if they have a good idea these days, which is good. Like, you can get into it.
It's never existed in the history of publishing. I mean, you can put out a book, you can write a book yourself and get it out to the world on Amazon where, conceivably millions of people can read it. In the past, when I was in high school, they were, just zines, fanzines.
Yeah, you make a zine.
That was it. But now you have the power to do what professional quote unquote writers are doing through traditional publishing. And that has just never existed before. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for writers to put out strange and personal books that mean a lot to them, but wouldn't have found a home in a publishing house.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, I'm glad that you're doing it, and
Glad that you're doing it.
I hope that you keep doing it. What's your next idea? What's the next character
Well,
you got going? Anything?
it's a tricky one, and the margin of error is very slim for this. But you ever read the Turner Diaries and all those horrible books that are about these racist books that influence all of these awful people? Well, they're horribly
No.
written, just absolute fucking garbage. I wanted to write a parody of one of those books where it was clearly just a giant piece of shit about, giant lizard people taking over the world and that sort of thing. So
Okay.
it just interests me. I mean, that's where we are now. We're just living in a world of madness where these crazy fuckers can be looked at as being normal. And that fascinates me.
It could almost be like the beginnings of QAnon.
Well, exactly. Pre-QAnon, these books would be sold in these catalogs that you would find, this bootleg version of these catalogs. Now you can get them anywhere, but
Yeah.
It was really, you're right. It was the beginning of that QAnon craziness at the years leading up to that. So that's what I would like to do, perhaps, is put out a book that came out, say, in the 70s or 80s, supposedly written by this idiot. It's always an idiot who writes my books, I think you'll notice. Just makes it easier for me that I don't have to write well.
Yeah.
That he puts out this book that becomes a big hit, and obviously he's fucking in it.
I need to have a character that writes with like really bad grammar and terrible spelling.
There's not all the mistakes in this book, whether I wanted them in there or not. This new book are there, and they belong there. So even spelling mistakes that I didn't notice, that's fine, and it just made my life a lot easier.
Well, that's wonderful. Everyone should go buy this book, Passing on the Right, by Skippy Batty Baddington, actually by Mike Sachs. And you can follow Mike on social medias. You're on the Twitter and the Instagram, where you post hilarious photos of insane books and TV show stills.
Yeah, I've been
taking
I enjoy photos of television since the early 90s with actual 35 millimeter film. And this was before I had a child and didn't really have time to watch TV. So there's a lot of this stuff from the 90s. And actually, I'll still do a few here and there. It's called Photos of Television. And that is its own Instagram as well.
Photos of And that was featured in Vanity Fair or something?
No, it was featured in the back page of New York Magazine. How'd you remember that? That's
I know everything about. I do research, Mike Sachs.
Jeez.
Deep research.
Look at you. That's like 15 years ago.
Well, it's great talking to you. We're
Marty,
neighbors, so I hope that we can get coffee soon. I know Bob has been into scheduling something for all of us to get together. So
let's do it. I love Bob. And you know what we should do is go down to Ocean City, Maryland.
We can go down to Ocean City, hun. Sure.
Yeah,
go down the boardwalk. Get some Thrashers.
Oh, some Thrashers, some rum and coke.
We can go to is it like Scandals?
Oh yeah. No, it's
Secrets.
Secrets. SEACRETS. Yes, that's where Randy goes to float in the bay and drink his drinks.
Excellent. We can get a pontoon boat and go tooling around in the bay.
A slice of heaven. You, me, and Bob in Ocean City, Maryland.
That sounds like a book on its own. That's a buddy road trip comedy if I ever saw one.
That I would never watch.
All right.
All right, Marty, I love you, brother. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for being on Talkward. Follow Talkward at Talkward Podcast and subscribe to weeklyhumorist.com. Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening to Talkward. Please subscribe, follow us, and visit weeklyhumorist.com.